everybody, Donna Schwartz here from the Everything Saxophone Podcast, and this episode's guest is Shawn Maxwell. Now, what's interesting about Shawn, I just met him, but I know him through a previous guest, Chika Inoue. Chika's been on our podcast a number of times. I've met up with her at the NAMM show a number of times as well. She's an incredible classical saxophonist. Now, why am I mentioning Chika? Because Shawn just did a new album, just released March 13th, 2026. He just released a new album with Chika called Frenetic Domain. We're going to be talking about that today. I got to tell you something, folks. You're going to want to definitely pay attention to this episode. We're going to be featuring some of that music. You're going to want to buy this album because it's different. It's a blending. It's an awesome blending of classical and jazz that is different. It's cool. It's unique. And so I'm leaving that hanging Chad. I'm dating myself there. I'm leaving that hanging Chad, that open loop for you guys. But welcome to the podcast, Shawn.
Well, thank you for having me. And hanging Chad is dating ourselves, then man, I'm dating myself as well. That seems not that long ago. Yeah, and I guess shout out before I even say a word, we're talking about Chika. She'll love that. That's awesome.
That's cool. She's going to tease me about that. I know. It's all good. It's all fun.
It's great. It's great. Well, again, thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to it. I've seen a handful of these online, and they always seem kind of cool. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'd like to do that. So when we set it up, I was like, cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Awesome. Well, this is the way I like to start off, and so that people can get to know you. So can you tell us, I would love to know also for me too, when did you get started in music? Not necessarily saxophone, because for a lot of our guests, they didn't start on saxophone. They started on something like piano or clarinet or flute or whatever.
Well, lucky for you, I have no problems talking about myself. I'll try not to go on too long. So I am originally from Joliet, Illinois, and it's a suburb of Chicago. I tell everybody, I never pretend to be from Chicago. I'm from Joliet. And I tell everybody, if you've never heard of that, if you've seen the beginning of the Blues Brothers movie where he gets out of prison, if you turn right and walk about 4 blocks down, that's where I went to high school. So, yeah. But Joliet has a very rich history, a great history of band and music. And I believe it wasn't the first, but it was like one of the first 4 or 5 actual band programs in a public school in the United States. And it dates back, I think it started in the 1920s, and in that time, they've had a total of 5 band directors the whole time. So there's a strong history there. Wow. I started in the Joliet band program in 4th grade, and I did not play saxophone. I remember everyone was signing up, and all my other friends, they all picked saxophone. And for some reason, my dad used to listen to vinyl records and sing along, and he had a Pete Fountain one. And he thought the clarinet was the coolest thing in the world. So as a 4th grader, I was like, okay, I guess Dad thinks that's cool. I think it's cool too. So I became a clarinet player. I tell everyone, you might not know it, at my core, I am a classical clarinetist. And I played clarinet 4th, 5th grade, all the way through junior high, all the way through high school. I never touched a saxophone. I never played jazz. And actually, I graduated high school. And I tell people I'm very different now from when I was back then. I feel like I'm organized, a go-getter. I work hard. I just didn't care about anything. I liked playing my clarinet, watching baseball, watching pro wrestling, and reading comic books. That's all I really cared about. And so I had no ambitions of doing anything. And I was living with my parents after graduation of high school, working a job, not really doing anything. And it was like early August, my parents sat me down and said, okay, you're either going to move out, get a real job, and go into your life, or we're going to enroll you in classes at Joliet Junior College, and we're going to figure out what the heck you're going to do with your life. And the best thing that ever happened to me in my life, because when I went there, the guy that was the head of the music department, Jerry Lewis, not the one you're thinking, Jerry E. Lewis, who was the father of a good friend of mine through high school. He was a trumpet player, mainly a jazz musician, but he ran the program. And he's kind of grabbed me and said, come here. And he was like, I know your parents want you to go to JJC. That's great. And he didn't ask. He's like, I want you to do music classes. I want you to give that a shot. And then he said, and I'm going to give you a saxophone. I'm going to let you borrow one. You're going to be in the jazz band, and you're going to start figuring that out. And I was just like, yes, sir. Wasn't a question. But thank God he did do that, because, I mean, I still do play clarinet, and I have that classical core to me, but that's really where I really got interested in music and jazz and saxophone, and it kind of changed the direction of my life. Had I not done that, I don't know where I'd be.
Wow. Okay. So, and this is very interesting. And this is honestly, this is a lot different than most of the people that I've interviewed for this podcast, because a lot of people, they may not have started on saxophone. They eventually got there, some maybe towards high school, some earlier, but they at some point knew they were going to go into music in some way, And so you're saying for you, it wasn't that, you just weren't certain.
No, I just well, my parents are the very stereotypical blue collar workers. Worked hard their whole life. We didn't have a lot of money, and it's one of those things as a kid you didn't realize. Now you look back, you're like, oh man, dude, it's they busted their rear ends, man. That's I thank you. So college was never really a thing. We didn't have money for it, and then honestly, I just didn't have a drive for anything. And like I liked my clarinet. I'll be honest, I was good at it. I barely practiced because things came very easy for me. That maybe sounds arrogant, but it wasn't like I wanted. I just didn't have any drive. And it's like when I got to Joliet Junior College, and mainly because of Jerry E. Lewis pushing me and just like that, just playing in the jazz band and starting to do that. Even though I sounded very much like a classical clarinet player for a few years playing saxophone, my embouchure was too tight, and I really swung like a box of rocks. But just that, and then just even learning about jazz. I remember taking at Joliet Junior College jazz history class that Jerry taught, and I remember we were talking about Duke Ellington, who I'd heard of, but then talking about like I remember Jerry was saying, at least at the time, not only was the most prolific jazz composer, he was the most prolific American composer around, and something like. This is when I was like 18. I remember him saying like, Duke had over 100, like great compositions out there. And I remember in my head, I'd never written a single tune at all. I was just like, I'm going to write 100 songs and put it out, which I've done that. I'm not going to say they're all great, but I just everything grabbed me. Like even the fact that Miles and Coltrane and Bird and Diz and all these guys not only were playing, but they were composing the music they were doing. I don't know how to explain it. It just kind of hit me, and it was like, oh, okay, this is what I need to do.
It helped you to find your purpose. That's so
Yeah.
interesting.
And before that, I had none. I just, like I said, sit around all day and do nothing.
Yeah, and what's really cool too, because again, you composed all the pieces for the album we're going to talk about, and you've got other albums out as well. But just it's interesting that that was the right time for you. That was the time when you were the most receptive to this. And I want to jump back though to something that you said too, where you sounded like a classical clarinet player playing saxophone. And I don't know if you could, if you could remember, but when you were first getting exposed to jazz, and we could talk about this in two ways. I'm thinking sound, but I'm also thinking in terms of approach and improvisation. Let's talk sound first. So when you were kind of teaching yourself, right? You were kind of teaching yourself saxophone. I mean, it probably was like, oh my God, this is so much easier to finger than a clarinet, right?
Hey, there's not a different fingering for each octave?
Yeah, I know. I don't have to cover a hole, I mean, it's like
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
But when when did you realize that you had to, I don't want to say switch your embouchure. It's not about that, because there are people that, will have studied with Joe Allard or his students, and they use that kind of, methodology and approach to clarinet playing and saxophone playing. Some people don't. They do something different. But when did you realize that you had to make a change with your embouchure, to get that jazz tone that you wanted?
Fairly early. I mean, I wasn't good at it, but and yeah, I mean, we could sit and talk about embouchure. I do clinics and so many things where I say embouchure and talk about that and airflow so much that I have nightmares about it. But and I know there's all kinds of different thoughts, but I kind of feel like when I'm going between my saxophone, clarinet, or even flute, there's like a little gear shift in my head where I'm changing, and it's just kind of when it comes to I figured out pretty early. I hate the word tight. I don't like, and I know there might be some other saxophonists, maybe more classical and some jazz ones that like to put pressure against the reed. I'm not that guy. I like on clarinet and saxophone, I have a very open clarinet or very open embouchure with both. But for clarinet, I'm thinking a little more firm with the corners and trying to. I'll admit I am not your normal classical clarinet player. I have a brighter sound. That's kind of what I like. But even then, I'm a little more firm. Whereas with the saxophone, I'm thinking just really open and just kind of thinking a little big. So I did get that after playing, within the first 6 months or so, and then I did start taking lessons. Uh, a Chicago guy, a legend named Ron Duar, who passed away a few years ago. But and he was even talking about just got to open up. You sound like a clarinet player. So I did realize it took a handful of years for it to start kicking in, where it's like, oh wait, I don't sound like I'm pinching up against the reed and everything when I play.
Okay, and did you, all right, and so it opened up your sound. It probably, when you did that as well, you probably maybe had to change equipment too, because, or no?
Man, I'll be honest, as the card carrying saxophone and clarinet person, I think that we all have that moment where we have a box of the
Yeah.
old mouthpieces that we used to play on and the half box of reeds. And every 2 months, you're like, this is the one, this is it. And then, no, wait, this one is. I had those until I became a Vandoren artist, which we could probably talk about later. Years ago, I started playing on the other stuff, and I was like, I took that whole box and I just started giving it to people. I was like, get this out of here. So as far as when I started changing gear, oh, that's like it's a little bit. My brain has like blocked it out, but I think I just started getting on more of the appropriate equipment. I think also when I was playing saxophone, because I was borrowing a saxophone that was given to me from the junior college. I think I was playing on a Eugene Rousseau classical mouthpiece. No offense to that, but that's not the
It's
right
going to
equipment
work.
I wanted to get. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You want equipment that's going to get out of your way, but it's got to be, it's got to yeah, it's got to get out of your way. Especially if you were changing from, changing into something that's more open, the mouthpiece can constrain you. So, you need to definitely something more open. And yeah, we'll definitely get into Vandoren for sure, because both you and Chika are Vandoren artists as well. So, we'll
Yes.
definitely get into that. So now let me go down the other route too. So you got exposed to jazz music in junior college around 18, then 19, and studying some of the stuff. But can you remember back to when you were first starting to improvise and like what that was like for you? And especially because you're classically trained, I know you didn't you said you didn't have the drive or whatever, but you were a good player, but used to reading dots on the page, I'm sure. So, what was that like for you to uh I guess try to get off the page?
Weird, exciting. I wanted to do it, and it took me a long time. I was always really good with my scales. I just picked them up, and I think I took clarinet lessons from fifth grade all the way through high school. Another Joliet legend, Clayton Shorey. He was probably in his mid 80s when I was taking lessons from him, and he was telling me like he had like grandchildren of his former students coming in taking, and he was big on basics. He made me count and clap rhythms. I needed to finger along and say the names of notes, and in scales he never wrote it down. He taught me the circle, fifths, and fourths, and he'd make me talk through the steps and then finger up and all that. So scales were always easy. And like, so what messed me up though is like junior college, you'd be like, oh, okay, well, this section you just play a C scale. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna hold out an F. I'm like, why does that not work? It's in the scale. So it took me a while to figure out but chords, and like as I tell students now, yeah, on that C scale, I'll play F, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp. I'll make them work, but I'm putting them in the right place. That was my biggest thing. Is like, well, one, what do I play, and two, how do I how do I put it in the right place? Because like even then, my teacher would show me, okay, we're gonna play these notes, okay, and then I'll do that, but I put them in the wrong spot, and I don't know. That was a huge challenge for me. I don't know. Did you go through kind of the same thing?
No, actually, because I grew up playing trumpet. So my trumpet teacher had me going off of the Jamie Aebersold Volume 1 book, How to Improvise. The cool thing growing up in New York, so I also started in fourth grade. Um, but we have a really strong, it's called NISMA, New York State School Music Association. We have a really strong state organization, Long Island, Nassau County, Suffolk County, just really strong. And a lot of jazz people came from there, a ton. And my teacher, actually he played jazz. He played a whole bunch of things. But the idea was, I was taught, okay, play a blues scale and then play that, "Hey, you're improvising, check it out, there wasn't too much after that, although I was into like writing, I was into composing music very early, like
Oh,
sixth grade. And I was also arranging stuff. That was back then when TV shows actually had themes that were cool, like Dynasty, that was awesome for trumpet players, St. Elsewhere was really nice. They're really nice themes, so I would be transcribing them and I would actually make wind ensemble arrangements for that. And we played in
oh,
school, but for me, I came at it from like a theory point of view, but also from that blues scale type of thing. But yeah, you have that uneasiness. It's like, oh, I don't know what to play.
well, yeah, I know all the notes. I have the ammunition. I just don't know how to use it. And that took a while, but I mean, that's where, I mean, obviously listening to others, playing with others, transcribing, but also when I started composing more, that's when I was like, oh, I'm improvising. This is what I have to. Oh, okay, and that's where like some lights in my head kind of started going off.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. So you were at the junior college, taking lessons, absorbing all this stuff. What happened after that point?
I transferred to a school in Southern Illinois called Millikan University. It's in Decatur, Illinois. It's the soy capital of at least the U.S. I know that because after being there the first week on all my visits, I never noticed it. Once in a while, you go outside and you could smell the air and taste it because of all the soy. So I was like, my into my first week, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die here. What's happening? Everyone's like, no, it just does that every couple of weeks. Um, but I went down there, and I that's was a great thing because I studied with the saxophone instructor who just retired from Millikan the end of last school year, Perry Rask, Dr. Perry Rask. He was a classical and a jazz guy, and he liked me, and he knew where I was coming at, and he like I spent 4 years down there, and he kind of like turned me more into a jazz guy. And there was also a clarinet instructor, Dr. Bill King, who like made me a stronger clarinet player. So I was doing that. I mean, there were other instructors there. Well, there was also a guy who I think he might have retired too, Dr. Dave Burdick. We always used to call him just Dr. Dave. He called himself an aging hipster, guitar guy, rock dude. But he's the one. I think it was maybe my second year there. I needed to get a requirement because I had transferred it into some weird thing. They're like, well, you have to take some kind of arranging class. And I was like, okay. And he set it up so I had a one-on-one where it was an arranging class, which actually turned into some kind of a composition class, which got me on that direction of like, oh, okay, maybe I might get close to writing those 100 songs someday. So yeah, I think it was 3 or 4 years there. It's been a while, so I forget, but I went through there and then eventually graduated and got thrown into the real world.
Okay, so this is interesting. So you could see like the points, the main turning points in your life, first exposure to jazz, and then now like the first exposure to jazz also got you, interested in composition, but here with Dr. Dave, right? So now you're starting to get more hands-on with that. So yeah, so then what happened after you graduated?
I moved back to the Chicagoland area and started gigging and did that for a little while. And then after about a year doing that, someone said, hey, man, you ever think of cruise ships?
Okay.
I got on a cruise ship. I auditioned and I went out for what was supposed to be a 2 month contract. Ended up doing it for 8 months because at the time I started dating one of the dancers who had an 8 month contract. So I extended that. And then after that, I bounced around Europe with her for about a year until finally kind of playing where I could, like in just odd jobs. And then finally that dissolved. And I moved back to the United States and I was like, oh, I'm starting all over again because no one knows who the heck I am.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay.
yeah, so did that, and then I'd say it's probably like 2001, 2002 where I'm back and just kind of. Then I was living in the Chicagoland area and just starting to pick up gigs and kind of doing the whole networking thing. I call it the you're running for like your politician, shaking hands and kissing babies, get everyone to vote for Shawn Maxwell. So, and yeah, just that's kind of where my career then like really started taking off in the Chicagoland area and just kind of getting in other bands and kind of going from there.
Okay. So, and one of the things I was going to ask you too, you came back from Europe, and it's like, it's interesting the way you said it's like I'm starting over again because no one knows me. So, yeah, there's networking. Do you have any tips for people when it comes to, you know, that kind of thing, or is it just this? Is it just the usual taking a gig?
Well, as far as networking, and I go in stretches where I'm, excuse me, where I'm really bad at it. I think the best thing is, as I joke about a politician, it's kind of the same thing, because if you're in front of somebody or your name's in front of them, they're thinking of you, right?
Yeah.
And when it's not, they're not. And there are a lot of musicians even that I'm like, oh, is that person still around? They do anything? I haven't heard his name or I haven't heard her name in forever. So I'm a big one on trying to be not only working for the sake of working, but just so you hear my name, and then also like the local jazz radio station is 90.9 WDCB. And like they have a jazz calendar that they read. This is where you can see. So, and I make it very clear to have me on there. So I've run into a lot of people are like, man, I hear your name everywhere. Well, whether they like me or not, they know my name. So I think it's good just to be given out and just pop it in. And, we all have houses or places where on a night we're off sitting on a couch and watching TV feels great. And I do that a lot. But there's a lot of times like where I'm like, all right, I got to go out. I need to catch this show because I want to see it. But also I just want people to see me and go, oh, yeah, that dude is still around. Maybe I should hire him or maybe I'll go to his show. So, yeah, I think it's a very important thing to do. And I'm big on it. When you meet me, I will, or even I never say nice to meet you because I met so many people. And I said it to one dude once. He was a saxophonist in Chicago. I will not say his name. And he got really mad. He's like, dude, we've met several times and we played together. It's like, sorry, dude. So I always just say, hey, good to see you now.
That's a good idea.
But I also introduce myself, my full name, Shawn Maxwell. Shawn Maxwell. That's even when I meet normal people outside the business, I say Shawn Maxwell. And they're like, ooh, I'm going to have to look that up. You said your full name. But I do it for two reasons. Is one is because I want you to hear that and have that in your head, Shawn Maxwell. But also there's another Shawn Maxwell musician that teaches not far from here who is a classical saxophonist. And we've been getting mixed up since college. So,
Oh, wow. That's pretty rare though, when you think about it.
yeah. He went to college 45 minutes down the road at University of Illinois. He was studying in the classical sax department where I was doing more jazz stuff at Milligan. And I first got aware of him. I'm sure he's a lovely guy. I've never actually spoken to him. But I first was made aware of him when I was getting called for gigs in college. And someone from the University of Illinois was explaining, I was like, yeah, someone told me to call you. And I was like, well, he doesn't play jazz. And she's thinking of the other guy. So since then, I always say Shawn Maxwell. And I'm always, most of my things will have a picture of me as well. So you can be like, it's that one.
It's that one. That's cool. I wonder, does he spell Shawn the same way?
He does.
Wow.
He does.
That's
And
unusual.
I have heard from a few band leaders way back in the day. Like this one guy's like, hey, man, I was trying to get you on this gig and this band leader will not have it. What did you do to this guy? And I was like, I've never met him. And then we come to find out, I was like, oh, you hired the other guy. And he took it where he shouldn't have. And it ended badly. So
Oh, no.
anyway, I think, knock on wood, most people around this area at least have kind of separated us. But I got off topic a little bit. I was talking
No.
about networking.
No, you didn't, because you know what? There was a really good tip in there. And the tip is this. I never heard anybody say it this way, but when you're introducing yourself to somebody, first of all, good to see you instead of nice to meet you. That's the first thing. The other thing though is saying your full name. Because number one, you may never know if someone else has the same name as you, but it's not even that. It's different. No one usually says their full name.
Oh, Well, and honestly, it's taken me a while to evolve in this. Whenever I'm playing, composing, improvising, teaching, or even talking, I want to be different. I want to be Shawn Maxwell. And whether you like it or you hate it or love it or whatever, I hope you don't hate it. But geez, if you hear a couple notes, I want people to go, oh, that's Shawn Maxwell. Or, oh, that's Shawn Maxwell. Either way, I want you to know it's me. I don't ever want to be a clone of anyone else. I listen and I learn, but I really go out of my way to be different as much as I can on pretty much everything.
And you know what's funny? Even before you said what you just said, I had written down, I like to look for a main theme, and I had written down the word different because, yeah,
Depending on who you talk to, that's good or bad.
that is true. But no, but no, it's a good tip for sure. And I never thought about that, in terms of networking, because again, it's not even networking too. It's even when you're playing, a lot of times the people that stand out, they have, something different about their tone. Like if I said to you, can you hear Stanley Turrentine in your head? You'd be like, yeah, you know, can I hear Cannonball? Yeah, you know?
Yeah, two things I was going to say. One, what you just said reminds me of another thing that attracted me to jazz. Because in classical, I don't want to say we all sound the same. That's not right either. But there was a wider variance of like from all these different players, even like a clarinet jazz player. It's like, oh, you can sound like that, and like you just have your own mark on it. And I don't mean that in a dig to classical, but just it's what attracted me to jazz more is you could have that. What else was I going to say? Oh, I'm talking over myself. Did I just talk over what you were going to say? I'm sorry.
No, what you just said right now, here's the thing, and I'll use this in a trumpet way too. Like when I listen to classical trumpet players, and here's the thing, I'm going to say this too. Everybody does have their own different sound. Like I know what Håkan Hardenberger sounds like compared to Maurice Andre, compared to Phil Smith, compared to Bud Herseth. Everybody's got their own sound, you know. But you're saying like, with jazz music, there is somewhat of a wider variance, in terms of what people sound like. And I think, but for brass players, classically, I think because we're making the sound, we don't get the chance to rely on a reed. There's going to be some different things. We're going to have more of we'll have that characteristic tone, but I think there's more variance just in general. That's my own opinion, whether it's right or wrong. But when it
I
comes to,
said,
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
oh
you.
yeah, 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 no, it's all good. And I'm just thinking though, when it does come to jazz, I mean, you know, just thinking about all the masters and how you knew right away who that was, you know? And like today, you could tell certain people, based on certain characteristics of their sound. That's the cool thing about that. Whereas with classical music, and I'm not as familiar with classical clarinetists, so I don't know if there is that, if there even is a lot of a variance in terms of, like you would probably, of course, you're going to know more than me. You'll be like, no, that person sounds like this, that person sounds like that for sure. But
I mean, I think there is, in my opinion, I think it's much clearer and wider in jazz.
yeah,
I think, I mean, you can go from Cannonball Adderley to Kenny Garrett, Michael Brecker to Sonny Rollins. I mean, those are, in my opinion, like, and not, I love all of those guys, but it's just so like different. And excuse me, personally, I just don't feel that there's as wide with classical, but well, maybe we should call Chika and ask her.
it's true. Well, here's the other thing too, just to think about. It also may be, um, I'm going to say the word frowned upon a little bit. You want that characteristic tone, but on the same token, you have to blend.
Yeah.
And it depending if you're a soloist, that's a different story. That's totally different. You've got to have your own character about you, but you're spending your whole life blending into an orchestra or into a woodwind quintet, or into a saxophone ensemble, I'll call it. And so you have to blend. And, uh, you know, eh, the thing is this too. I mean, I know that there's also saxophone ensembles where people do have their own characteristics, and I totally get that. But I'm just thinking, just generally speaking, in terms of classical
Yeah.
playing, in order to blend, you do have to be a little bit of a chameleon.
Yeah. Well, then that's a whole other set of skills, right? And then a
Yeah.
whole other like what's the word I'm looking for? You're looking for a different goal then at that point, right?
Yeah, but then here's the other argument also when you're in a big band and you're in a sax section, you've got to blend. You can't your vibrato needs to, for the section solos, it's got to match. You got to match the first alto. There are band directors that, and I don't agree with this, but they make all of their saxophone players play the same exact mouthpiece. The mouthpiece and make and the brand and the model too, and even the tip opening. That I don't agree with because everybody's a little bit
Whenever a band director starts talking about tip opening, nothing good's going to happen.
and especially depending on their experience. But there is that idea that when you're in a big band, you do have to blend. You don't want to stick out like a sore thumb because that is not good. It's interesting. That kind of relates to classical music. But as a soloist, though, you do want, as you just said, you want to be like, oh, that's Donna, or oh, that's Shawn Maxwell. So
Yeah, and I don't really do a lot of big band work, at least right now and recently. I mean, one, financially, there's not a lot of good paying big bands things, but also I guess it's just, I love playing in a big band, but yeah, it's just not something. I think there's different paths and avenues you can go and what you want to do in music on anything, right? And for mine, it just hasn't been there, not on purpose. It just hasn't been happening. So I 99.9% of the time when I'm playing a gig, I am being Shawn Maxwell. So I'm good with that.
yeah, no, yeah, for sure. And so then let me ask you this question, so then you're doing all the gigging and whatnot. When did you start really getting into, writing, composing your own music?
Well, I self-released my first album in 2005. And I talked about doing it forever. And finally, I was like, I need to do this. And I'd always, like I said, back when I was exposed to jazz, I was like, I want to compose and write music. And then as I was doing it, I was like, well, maybe I'll do a few originals and some standards. And then I was like, oh, yeah, I got to pay for those, don't I? Oh, I don't have the money. We're going to write all the music. So that was part of it. But that first one, I mean, I self-released, so it wasn't, didn't go out to a ton of people, but I did get good reviews on it. And then I was like, you know what? Going back to that like being me thing, well, the people that reviewed the first one were saying this is very different. Now I will be the first to say those are out of print and you won't find them anywhere. I'm proud of those. I didn't sound like me yet because I didn't have the reps. I hadn't become me yet. The tunes were, I think, were pretty good, but just my playing, I hear it and I'm like, ugh, who is that guy? But that's when I really got into writing, and then like every album. So this album that just came out is my 14th album, and I've composed all the tracks on all of them. And I go back to I was saying like Duke, and I'm not putting myself in the same boat as Duke Ellington. I don't need the hate mail, guys. Okay, but I learned when I was younger. He put out 100 originals, and I counted. I think it's like 125, 130 that have originals on those 14 albums. So it's originally I did it because if you recorded a standard or something else, you had to pay certain money to certain people. And I was broke and young. and then it just became my thing. And I actually really like doing it. And especially over the last 6 albums, each album I've had kind of like a theme or a story. So when I'm composing for the album, I will have all the tunes, say there's 8 or 10 or 6 tunes. I will put like little callbacks in each tune or some relations, whether it's like a half diminished kind of progression or just a little lick that comes back or just even a feel or whatever. I try to make that. And especially since the pandemic, even when I play gigs, I'm all about telling stories, not just with the music, but even before and after. It's like, hey, I wrote this because of this. This is what you might hear. And I don't want to give like a college lecture because I want music fans and non-jazz fans that are there to enjoy it, and they usually do. So, yeah, sorry for my long-winded answer. I just got into composing because I like the storytelling part of it as well.
No, that's really cool. And so I like the idea each album has a theme, okay, but also it's like you have like maybe a motif or maybe an idea that carries through, with a lot of the pieces on there. That's really cool.
Thank you. I try to do that. Sometimes people will listen and go, "Oh yeah," and sometimes maybe they won't hear it, but it is in there.
When with your first album, you said that people that reviewed you got good reviews, and they said this is different. What led them to say that? What was different about it?
Um, in my opinion, I mean, I can and I do swing. I know the jazz police will take me away. But it was, I've always been more modern, and I'm not like just funking out or anything, but more modern in the approach where swing is maybe sometimes implied and not happening. But I also, you might not know it from the style of music. I love Dave Brubeck. And Time Out was an awesome thing. And one of the first songs I wrote is called Dangerous Curve, which is kind of I don't want to sound like I'm an old school big band, but kind of my theme song now. And it's originally, I wrote it in a weird 7/8 to 5/8 to like kind of like, 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1. Anyway, but I originally heard it like take 5. And then we started rehearsing. It's like, oh wait, what if it kind of, so I tend to write in different kind of I don't want to say odd, but different kind of time signatures that you wouldn't normally see. And I like to make them difficult, but sound easy or sound more less difficult as they should be. And I like to mess with chord progressions and I hate to say the word angular because then it just sounds like I'm throwing forks at the wall and yelling. But I like to, I'm not just a standard 3 6 2 5 1. I like to make it go in places that sometimes you feel like it shouldn't or it doesn't. But in my opinion, with the intention and just the way we're doing it, I think it works. So yeah, I think that's what you were asking me.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So then, in exploring these different chord progressions, all right, let me ask it this way. When you're composing now compared to maybe composing for the first album, what's your process? Like, do you hear a melody in your head or are you going off of a groove? What's going on?
It's all over the place. There's sometimes where I have something that pops in my head and I write it down and that's it. It takes me 5 minutes. That's very rare. Sometimes I'm just writing a chord progression and just kind of singing it. Sometimes I'm composing on a piano. Sometimes I'm playing a saxophone or a flute. Sometimes, and I'm going to take a second and say R.I.P. Rest in peace finale.
Yeah.
My notation choice since 1996, which every day I open it up, I'm just like, whew, it opens.
I do the same thing.
And I will not mention any others. There was one that we were all told to go get, and I tried it for 2 days, and my wife come home and thought someone died. And I was like, I took it off my computer at that point, and
Oh, you took it off. Yeah, I downloaded it. I tried it also for 2 days. And you know what it is, everybody, when you get so used to a music notation software program, it becomes about efficiency and speed. And you're just, it's like your left hand. You just get so used to using it. I took a course in Sibelius, a summer course, a 1 week course, and I was still involved in Finale. I think I've been using Finale since either the year 2000 or maybe 1999. So almost as long as you, right? And so I said, you know what? Let me try to learn Sibelius. Everybody says it's user friendly. Now this was in the maybe early 2000s. I was pulling my hair out. I couldn't take it. I couldn't deal. It was so different than Finale. I curse myself now. I should have went down that route because of what's happened. But even MuseScore drives me crazy. And I know a lot of people use it. Maybe I just have to really like just shut myself off from society and just figure the thing out. But
oh, I'm with you. Sibelius or MuseScore are probably my next. I'm what I call a speedy entry guy. I use an old school mouse. I click everything, and
that's what I'm doing.
I put a C in the downbeat chord note that, and then I'll click in my rest. I can do that very quickly. And again, I'm not going to name names. The other one we're told to do. I go to the beginning and I click, and they're like, "Oh, you wanted that on the E of 3, didn't you?" No. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. I compose a lot, even just in Finale, just kind of like looking at stuff. And so I wish I had a cooler like composition of like, oh, I hear the birds singing, and then I look into the sky, and then I think of my uncle, or I don't know, I don't have that. It's all very different. But like I said before, I found for me the tunes that are better, and the tunes that are better when we're playing gigs are ones that have a story for it. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm from Joliet. A couple albums ago, I did what I called the J Town Suite, a tribute to my town, and one of them was about a hot dog stand that you all go to at 2 a.m. after you've been drinking adult beverages, and you stand in line. And people are like, I know that. I can, like, I've never been there, but I know that. So even then, I have the story of like, what do I want to do with this? And I can remember, I don't want it to sound pretentious, but I remember that time with that place, or that time with that person, or with that event. And it kind of gets me kind of going for like a melodic, and kind of like even just a melody, like kind of jumping off ground.
Memories, it's memories. And stories, memories, those are things that people can absolutely relate to. Like you mentioned before, going to college, and then it's like, oh my gosh, what is that? I'm smelling soy, the soy fields and whatnot. You just reminded me of a memory when I played field hockey in junior high school. And there was a candy cane factory that was very close by. So whenever we'd go outside for practice, you'd be smelling candy canes. You're smelling the peppermint, you know?
That's a lot better than what I had.
Okay, it probably was, but I will never get that smell. And I didn't mind it. Don't get me wrong, I didn't mind it, but you just reminded me of that,
Ah,
when you think about it. So it's
well, that's your next hit song, right?
yeah, there you go. Field hockey and candy canes. But so, I guess it's fair to say, like, you're trying to find a story, something that's relatable, and that's kind of what's driving you. And sometimes it could be, a chord progression that you find, or it could be, a melody that's popping in your head. And of course, we all love it, when it's like you're hearing something, you're feeling something. It's like, and you've got a second to like write it out, or I'm pointing to my phone, like record it on your phone or
Mhm.
something like that, and it just comes out. That's always a blessing.
Yeah, and the story thing too for me is like my first six albums are, I think they're good. I'm proud of them. There's a lot of good thing in there. Not a lot of story, good compositions. I'm also like, I love the jazz fan, and thank you. But I'm also trying to appeal to more than that. And I feel like there's a lot of places where non-jazz fans either get dragged along or just show up and will come up to me and like, I've never been to a jazz show before. This was awesome. And I think of some other people who are great players who never talk to the audience the whole hour and a half set, and they play every tune's boom, 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 and they play 30-second notes. And like people are like, and man, maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud. I don't want to sound like a jerk, but I'm trying to like, with the stories and approaching people, I think it can break down some walls, because if we're being honest, jazz is to a lot of people an ugly little four-letter word. So I want to kind of bridge that gap and not be, I don't know, make it more fun.
Fun and approachable, maybe, because I think there's also, there's certain parts of the country where jazz is not as prominent at all, where it's not taught in schools, or the only place that you can get it, well, yeah, I mean, we got all these tools now, Spotify and YouTube and that kind of thing. But if someone doesn't turn you on to it, it may be that much harder to find. And so, for a lot of people, they're not going to understand it. That's the big thing. And jazz, it's funny. It's just there's no way to really describe jazz except for improvised music, right? Because the thing is that, during Ellington's time, right, you had the big bands, you had swing, and then, each there was a certain period of time where it was defined by a certain kind of movement, right? But now, with the explosion of online platforms, uh, you know, like I like listening to the jazz stations, but there's times like I just want to listen to Bob Reynolds. I just want to put his albums on because I love the way he plays.
Oh, he's awesome.
Oh my God. And he's very melodic. He's very melodic, and he's so I had him on the podcast too. He's a wonderful person. And he's just,
I've met him a few times. He's always been super cool.
yeah, just incredible skill. So there's times when I want to hear something more modern, you know what I mean? Instead of them always playing the masters, I want to hear the people that I interview on my podcast, that's the thing.
Well, and I'm weaving in and out, going back and forth, back to maybe not the networking thing, but for the younger musicians, why this is so hard is because not only, I never think of that I'm competing against another artist, but I guess when it comes to airplay or interviews, you can only be so many, right? So, but not only are we with each other, but we're also dealing with the great guys that have passed on long ago, you know? So why didn't you play my thing on the radio? Well, I had to play Miles and Coltrane. And
Yeah.
so just another thing you mentioned, it's like, ugh, not necessarily bad, but it just kind of makes it hard for more modern musicians.
You know what? It does. And we do, don't get me wrong. I love listening to Miles and, all the masters and stuff, but it's interesting. It's just like, you know what? In some instances, I wish radio programmers would give more time to the people that are playing right now, because a lot of times with classical music stations, how often do you hear modern classical music? You don't. It's awful when you think about it. I mean, how many times do I want to hear a Mozart symphony? Do I want to hear all the trumpet concertos? Yeah, I do. I still do. But man, I would love to hear a modern trumpet concerto. I really would. I'd love to hear Håkan Hardenberger play something. I would love to hear, some of the younger trumpet players that are up, or the symphony first chairs. I'd love to hear their stuff on a radio. And like I said, I'd like to hear my friend's stuff, and I have to go to different places to do that. Not even Sirius XM. Like they'll have the real jazz station. Um, and if you use iHeartRadio, like I could listen to WBGO, which is what I kind of, not grew up listening to, but in college I would listen to that, right? But I would love for there to be like a station that would, yeah, you're gonna play some classic people here and there, but let's put some more modern people out. Like Keisha Benjamin, she's a beast, she's an incredible player.
Yeah.
She's revolutionary, like have that.
Well, a few things I was going to say that I agree wholeheartedly. First of all, I've had XM radio for a long time now, before it was even melded with Sirius,
Me too.
and
Yeah.
it used to have a jazz called Beyond Jazz channel,
Yes, that's right.
and I loved that. And what there was a lot of times where that's where I got hip to a lot of people. I might have heard Bob Reynolds on there first. I remember Eldar and a bunch of the cats that I love now. I would do that, hear them, and then go buy their album. And people, that's what you do. You go buy the album. We'll
Yeah.
talk about that
Yeah.
later.
Exactly.
But yeah, the cool thing I tell everyone, in my opinion, on jazz is that other than perhaps classical music, we respect our past and the masters and the ones that came before us more than any other genre. And I think that's great. And the bad thing is, I think sometimes we get stuck in that past. And there is, even in the Chicagoland area and touring too, places that I've gone in and played and went really well, and the people dug it, but the owner's like, you didn't play any standards. I'm like, well, I told you that's not what we're doing, and your people really dug it. Yeah, I don't know. There's even people in Chicago, other musicians that like, oh, you're playing standards. You think you're better than Coltrane? It's like, no, but if Coltrane and those guys just played standards, what do we have? I'm not putting in myself saying I'm Coltrane or anything, but I'm gonna write and become me. Just like, isn't that what jazz is?
No, for sure, because yeah, you're right. Jazz pushes the boundaries, right? It definitely pushes the boundaries. That's
Be
what.
yourself with the volume turned way up, and hopefully people like it. And if, like we said before, if they don't, then they're like, oh, that's that one person. I don't like him, but hey, good for him.
Yeah, be respectful. When it comes to that, for sure. But yeah, I forgot about that Beyond Jazz thing, and um, again, we also have to give hats off to the college radio stations, and like out here, there's K Jazz. So they will have times where they do play some modern players. I haven't listened too much to BGO again since I moved out here, and I recently, you know, found iHeartRadio, and I can listen to BGO now, which is great. And I think they are starting to play more modern people, but it's just interesting how classical music stations, it's always that, you rarely hear modern stuff. And just with the jazz stations, sometimes they're falling in that same trap. And, it's not doing justice to people that today are playing and trying to put albums out and trying to get people to hear it, when you're trying to break through all the noise that's out there.
And ultimately, they're not growing their own audience because some of the audience that is stuck in 1940 perhaps aren't going to be listening, aren't going to be around in another 20 years. And then what are you playing for then? You know what I mean? I think there's a good mixture that can be had. And do you know Dr. Brad Stone that's out near you, radio dude?
No,
He
no.
does a great job. I'll have to hip you to him. He's not only a fantastic human being, originally from the Chicagoland area, is very progressive on like playing all kinds of styles of jazz and modern stuff, and is a cat enthusiast as well. If you follow him on Facebook, you see all of his cats all the time. So there's nothing bad about that, dude.
Okay, cool. Well, except I'm allergic to cats, but it's all good.
Oh, well, not if you see the picture on Facebook.
Okay. I'll have to see it. Well, you know what? And this is actually going to lead into, this is actually a perfect segue. Um, we're going to talk about your newest album, Frenetic Domain. That's right, Frenetic Domain. But I'm thinking about one of the tracks that's called Cats Are Gods. And I was going to make a joke because I have two greyhounds, I have dogs. I can't have cats because I'll sneeze my head off. But, but I just thought that was funny. Nice little cat lead in. But
All right.
where did the Cats Are Gods come from? Was it because of your friendship with Dr. Brad, or you have cats, or?
I do have a cat. I am honestly much more of a dog person. We do have the cat. I love my cat too. But yeah, I'm very a dog person. I have right now, my dog is named Marvel, and everyone that comes around my house, they know Marvel well because she's like a little min pin dachshund kind of mix. The most loving, like cuddly dog ever. If I'm watching TV, I have to have my arm around her. Otherwise, she's pawing at me. She's just the greatest dog in the world. And about a year after we adopted her, we adopted a cat that my daughter was little at the time, gave her the name of Boots, which we all thought was stupid. So she's never been called that. We all call her Kitty or Rock. We jokingly call her like the Rock. She's the cat. So so I have a cat. I have a dog, and I like cats and dogs. Still more of a cat person. Honestly, this was originally the guy that plays percussion on this, a percussionist in Chicago named Nils Higdon, who is also a very nice, like just one of the nicest souls in the world, great percussionist, drummer and everything. He's the ultimate cat enthusiast. I've been on tour with him where I'd walk into a gas station as we're driving somewhere, and he'd been in there for 5 minutes, and he's talking to 4 or 5 strangers like they've known each other for 20 years. And his own range joke, he's like, "Hey, you want to see pictures of my cats?" And he shows them pictures of the cats. And like, we're leaving, and he's like, "Oh, well, I hope your sister's surgery goes well." And it's like, "Nils, you were in there for 10 minutes. What happened?" So he just loves cats. So I jokingly said, "I'm going to write something for you," because he always says, "Cats are gods." So I said I was going to write that. And then it really kind of came together when I'm in my house, what I call my office, the room where I write and teach and compose and practice. And right out here outside the door, the cat and the dog were just kind of chilling there, like just watching me, relaxing. And all of a sudden the cat gets up and does this weird, crazy thing and kind of goes, I was like, okay, well, here's the tune. So there's a lot of different things in there. I didn't think about Brad Stone for the Cats Are Gods, but yeah, it maybe hit a little bit in there. But that's ultimately how I got started on this track.
Well, it's funny, going back to the networking just for a second. Well, here's another thing that you can do, folks. You could talk about your cats. Never mind.
No, and you know what? With the networking thing too, and maybe I'm dwelling too much on it. One thing I would say to all younger people, or even anybody, and you're talking to somebody, ask them something about themselves. I can sniff out people when I talk to them, and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on, man? I heard the new album. It sounds great. Is everything going well? Oh, are you going here?" Or even like if I'm working with a director or whatever, "Hey, tell me about the program. How long have you been here? Do you have jazz every day?" Or I'm asking because I actually want to know, but I'm interacting. And when I talk to someone and I walk away, I've said that to a couple people next to me. It's like, Yeah, that dude never asked me a single thing. He's a jerk. Or I just know it's like he's like there's he doesn't want to interact. He doesn't want to actually work with anybody. He just wants someone to kiss his butt. And I was like, yeah, that's I'm not gonna like be mean to that dude, but I know that it's like a closed door kind of thing. Maybe I'm getting a little too weird on that, but it just popped in my head when we were talking about networking.
No, and actually, just we'll go down this just for a second more too. The other thing, also though, when we're dealing with the younger generations, the thing is that they grew up with phones. They grew up, with all this technology. Where I'm Generation X. We didn't, you know.
Same here. Same
Okay.
here. Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, and again, because I do all kinds of clinics, and I'm always like, hey, I'm not the scary old dude. I'm not the old dude yet. I'm older than you, but I also try to say like, hey, we have to be better with this communication and going back and forth. And I think I don't want to sound the old man yelling at a cloud, but I think the younger generation, go junior high through even some in their late 20s now, just are awkward with it. And I think the only way they're going to get better is saying like, hey, it's okay, but we need to work on this. Hey, you're a great piano player, but I'm not taking you on a 5-day tour if you kind of like this, because it's going to be kind of painful and it's not going to be fun. So hey, let's talk. And I don't know, I find most kind of like, oh, I didn't know I was doing that, okay, and then it's everything's cool. But I don't know, maybe just something I think should be brought up to many more people.
Well, it's they also they don't know what they don't know, because that's how they were brought up. That's the thing. And what's interesting, the younger people on the younger end of that are I've heard some stories where they're kind of like going against the phone, like they want the old style phone, like the flip phones where you didn't have all the stuff on it.
Wow.
Which in some ways that's good too. I think,
Yeah.
having a phone for, it's always good to have a phone on you, but I mean, go to a restaurant and look, how many people do you see have their heads buried in their phones? You
And
know,
I do that from time to time,
no,
and
I
I
do
think
it
a
too.
little bit, but yeah, no, it's I don't know. I just think communication in general. The generations before me had no qualms telling me, hey, this is what you need to do, kid. And I don't think we need to talk like that to them. But yeah, I think, like you said, they don't know what they don't know, and hopefully, um, some of them get a little defensive, like, oh, I don't want to be told what to do. It's like, but hopefully they take it well. And yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's more about, I think it's more about communication, and I think it can affect, especially when you're playing in an ensemble. Um, you need to have you could be greatest player since sliced bread, but if you can't communicate through words also, it's not going to be as effective, because
Well, communication and just like, can we just be cool human beings that are like, we don't have to be best friends, but I mean, again, not going to say it. There's a piano player that comes to mind who's fantastic in Chicago, and I will never hire them again because I spent 5 days in a car with him, and I'm surprised I brought him back to Chicago.
jeez.
Because he was just even the other guys are like, what is with this dude? I was like, I don't know, man. Let's just get through this. Yeah, no, there's a list of people who just don't know how to act or behave or whatever, and unfortunately, that happens in the world. But yeah, no, I
Or
can't, I
even
can't.
music. It's
Uh,
important for music because you need to have, just like a sports team, you've got to have some kind of, camaraderie on the stage, because, you're sharing ideas, and it's really hard if someone is closed off.
Well, and not only that too, it's like I said, it's like, okay, can I then sit with you for the half hour or hour break that we have in between these two sets and not want to stab my eyes out? Can I drive from here to Pittsburgh and back and go, oh, that was fun, or it's just, I don't know. Maybe I'm becoming the old man. We should have the life skills: how to start a conversation, how to not be annoying, how to like read a room.
How to read a room, or not think of yourself as a cat who's a god. But so I'm gonna segue into that for a
All right,
second.
we're back. We're back. I got off.
Yeah, no, I did too. So it's all good. So here's what I want to do. I'm gonna share my screen, and I want people to hear this. So this is one of the tracks from Shawn's album that's been released very recently. And I just want to go to the right thing over here. Okay, cool. You should be able to see my screen over here, right?
Yep.
Okay, we've got the 3-song sample over here. So I've got actually Cats Are Gods up first. So let's talk about this a little bit. We talked about like, the origin of this, but it's starting out, if I remember right, this is the track, it's starting out with Chika playing the classical saxophone. And the funny thing, Chika, I mean, she could play like nobody's business. And the thing is though that, she says she can't improvise. That's her thing. And that was the joke with you guys, right? Like, you can improvise and do all this stuff. You could play classical clarinet, but she could play classical saxophone, but she doesn't improvise.
Yes. And Chika and I both met a handful of years ago. We are both Vandoren artists. More specifically, we are about a few of about 40 or 50, I believe, that are in the country that are artist clinicians. And Vandoren has a great program for junior highs, high schools, and colleges. We all kind of have like a territory. I jokingly say I'm the Chicago area Vandoren mob boss. Maybe I shouldn't joke like that though. But schools reach out to me or reach out to them. Vandoren will send us artist clinicians out to work with their woodwind students, teach them more about reeds, reed rotation. They send us out with reed samples for the students to try, mouthpieces to try out, and other swag, and just kind of be more uplifting and teach them more about embouchure and how not to bite up against the reed and all that. And the best thing is Vandoren covers the expenses and it's free to schools.
That's awesome.
So that's how I know Chika. And once a year, Vandoren, they have what they call the Vandoren Artist Clinician Summit, where they fly us somewhere really cool for a handful of days. We all kind of hang out, try things, talk shop, and I've become good friends with about 40 to 50 classical and jazz saxophonists and clarinetists around the country that I don't know. And Chika was the one that one day we were at the end of a meeting, just all of us enjoying some adult beverages. And I jokingly said, I'm going to make you improvise. And then it went from, you know what? Well, what if I just wrote something that kind of mixes your classical in with my kind of angular modern jazz? And here we are. So the Cats of God thing, kind of going back to the story I tell people, is the beginning of this tune starts very under control and pretty with Chika and the keyboard. And that's, the cat just being chill. And then it kind of kicks in and goes into overdrive. And that's you get the cat being a cat. And for that one, we kind of go back and forth in there. And then there's times where both Chika and I are in at the same time. And you can hear like how we do have some similarities, and you can definitely hear the differences as well.
Cool. All right. We're going to take a listen to this. This is awesome. Cats Are Gods. Let me just say this. It's interesting. The melody starts off a little angular when you think about it, right? It's starting off angularly. Now it's more, I don't want to say more horizontal. Let's say it like that. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm hearing chord progressions. I'm expecting one thing and it's doing something different, right? So it's the same thing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then the cat's going to start to go a little crazy over here, just like you told me before. That's such a cool beat. And so what's really interesting, as I was listening to this at first, I did not expect that to happen. Again, different, right? So, you start, it's chill, chill, cats actually chill. Okay. And then this really cool groove is happening here. And when you said the story, when you were, I don't know if it was this piece or another piece you were writing, but your cat, the dog are just listening, and all of a sudden the cat's like,
Yep.
That's
That was done on purpose. And you know what? I like the beginning that's featuring Chika and kind of starting it off. At first, I was like, originally I was like, I want to start off the album with this, and then I was like, oh, you know what? Some of my fans that have bought this, they listen and they're like, hey, Shawn sounds really different now. Like thinking of his Chika, but I was like, no. If they can listen another minute, they'll see what's going on.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. All right, cool. I'm gonna bump ahead a little bit. Let's see. Let me go to like around here. This is like the drummer. This is the drummer, soloing and stuff like that. And you guys are putting the stabs in over here. That is so cool. That is really,
Oh, thank you.
cool. No, it really isn't. And I'm just thinking to myself, so, here the drummer pretty much has some liberty to put fills in and stuff, and you guys are putting the stabs in, within time. You have to have, not every drummer can play classical and can play jazz. And, so, you have to have a super talented drummer in order to be able to pull this off.
Yeah, no. Greg Essig plays drums on this, and this is where also Nils Higdon, the percussionist, is on this one as well. And yeah, we rehearsed it, and we just kind of went with it. But I thought it worked actually really, really well.
And what's interesting too about your pieces too, it's not like I've had a lot of people in the podcast, and some of them with some of their music, sometimes it's free form. So it's hard to do shows. It's hard to go out and do shows because, it was free form put together for the album. And then, to transfer that, it's a hard thing, but, you have, the written music, of course, but, there's constraints. So this is something where you can, and, you had mentioned that you're going to be doing some shows with Chika in Chicago. This is going to be before this podcast is going to air, but you can do that with the assurance that while your improvisations may not sound the same, but the crux of the piece is going to be there.
Yes. And I've always, I get the freeform thing. That's great. And we do that occasionally. But especially for touring and playing out, I like to have the structure of, this is the tune. We're going to play this melody in these sections, and then improvise, do whatever you want. We can, and even this one, sometimes depending on the day, we'll go in a different direction depending on how we're all feeling and how we're playing. So
cool. And yeah, and that's the flexibility with that for sure. Let me do a little bit more. I'm just going to bump ahead here for a second. Let me just go to, oh yeah, okay, hold on. Really good. So with your own improvisation, like let's say you're playing this, in these shows coming up, do you how do I want to word this? Are there certain motifs that you're gonna do? Like, I'm hearing certain things that are coming out of here. Are there certain motifs you're gonna hit, or this was just freely improvised? This is what you felt for the recording.
Um, yes and no. First of all, I don't know about you. I don't hate listening to myself, but whenever I'm hearing myself, I'm like, all right, let's just go on to the next thing. We can, because I'm always constantly listening to myself or practicing and just like, how can we get it better? Um, it, it depends. I like to have different motifs, and I'd like to like go back to the storytelling. When I'm playing a solo, most of the time, I'm trying to think of like building off of that and making it like how am I trying to say this? Like motifs and things that like you can hear some repetition and not just random note, random note, random note, random note. I think we all, as jazz musicians, and maybe you would agree or disagree, I can start playing really fast stuff, and I sometimes do that. And sometimes in my head, I'm like, stop. What are you doing? Just play something for the next 4 measures, 8 measures that kind of connects and is a little more spatial. So, am I going to do that exact same thing every time? Of course not. But I'm always trying to think of something like kind of like that. Is that kind of what it felt like I did to you on there?
It's not so much that, like, there was some really good motifs in here, and I was like, wow. I'm thinking like,
Thanks.
this is no, this is really cool, and I'm thinking, gosh, and I'm wondering if this is, he's thinking melodically this way, um, and like that's your essentially your style of improvisation. I can hear that, and I can hear, the little tail offs, when you're doing a little bit of a faster thing, but you're coming back to a melody. You're coming back to something that's we were talking about this before, like that's singable. And I'm thinking this is like such a good melody. I wonder if this was actually like part of the piece, because you know what I mean. It's a mix of classical and jazz. So that's what I was thinking.
No, it was improvised, but again, like I said, tied to the storytelling thing. I wanted to just. I mean, I can put a bunch of altered scales and different things that weave in and out there, but everyone does that, and it's been done. And like I said, going back to what I said earlier, I'm going to Shawn Maxwell it, and hopefully that'll be good.
And no, and this I really like this. Let me stop the share for 1 second because I want to be able to see you without looking in the corner. Okay, so with your solo, so like it's very thematic, and I'm hearing like really great little motifs that are developed, but your control over your range going really high, right? And just everything is even sound.
Oh,
What
thanks.
do you have like any tips that you can share with the listeners in terms of I know you mentioned before, like very open, right? You're not going to squeeze the reed to death. But is there any like exercises that you do that you found that really helped you?
Yeah, all right. So I want to make sure I did not study with Kenny Garrett, but in the early 2000s, he would come to Chicago, and I met up with him like 3 or 4 times and got like a lesson. And the biggest thing he told me, like I don't even purposely do it when I play. I think my neck pops out. And the biggest thing he was saying is like open, just oh. I tell my students oh, and this is just as relaxed. Like I'm like again, I'm thinking of what Kenny told me is like I'm yawning, like I'm not bored, but I even make myself yawn. I'm like oh, and this is just as open. I'm a big believer in no pressure. My bottom lip is just touching the bottom reed. And same with clarinet. Although when I play clarinet, I'm thinking more about O E. Kind of had this firm. I tell jokingly, I'll do just the saxophone as like and play it for students, going, yeah, now we sound like a stupid saxophone player who thinks they play clarinet because it's like, but for saxophone, I'm just very open. I'm thinking my airstream is like a little straw, just going consistently. And
Oh,
if I'm playing from my low B flat to altissimo range, my tongue is somewhat changing, like kind of almost like I'm singing, but this doesn't move. I don't move my embouchure. I don't tighten up. I don't. It's a very slight thing. It's only maybe even like my tongue and like my throat, like. And I'm a horrible singer, but you sing higher, ah, that narrows up, so maybe a little bit, but um, I was taught originally by some other people of changing. And I'm like, I don't do that. I play, especially for jazz, it's all the same. And it's one less thing I have to think about.
Mm.
What's your approach, or am I doing it wrong?
No, it's interesting. When you say like changing, do you mean like, like let's say this is the mouthpiece with the reed, you mean like just moving along the bottom? Is that what you mean? Or do you mean, what do you mean? Like
I
firmly?
think there's a lot of people that are tightening up and relaxing, and I don't want to catch the fury of anyone, but there is a big school about people with putting pressure on the reed to play higher notes, and I'm like, as far as I know, the reed needs to vibrate more to play higher, so I'm just going to not do that. But there's pressure against the reed, and then there's also just the changing of sometimes sliding more mouthpiece in, which seems insane to me, or rolling in and out the bottom lip or anything.
I see.
And
Okay.
to me it just seems, and I'm sure you can have someone else on that will tell you why that's all good. Okay, to me it's just like it's so much, and I think you said my sound sounds pretty even, right? It's like not like jumping out at you or anything. For me, it just felt like it's just I have that thing, and now I don't have to worry about it, and I can just play, and I can think more about building a motif or a melody instead of like, well, is my tongue 2 diameters higher than it needs to be, or whatever. It goes back to the I'm ripping on the tip opening thing now because I used to be that dork and I hate that stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm more of the thing where, like imitating how you sing, and using, like Joe Allard, some of the methodology with that, the, that kind of just that kind of setting for your mouth. And everybody looks different when they do it, Walt Weiskopf, follows that, but his embouchure is totally different than what I look like. Me being a trumpet player first, I'm gonna look, I don't know, firmer or tighter, but when you've been playing trumpet for over 40 years, 50, oh my God, yeah, 45 years or something like that. All right, well, whatever. You're going to look a little different. Everybody's going to look a little different. I guess the thing is, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's always, I'm always curious about how people approach, embouchure and like evenness of tone and that kind of thing. Because, look, whatever works, works. It's great, and everybody's going to be, playing different types of equipment. The most important thing is that is it getting in the way or is it getting out of the way? You know?
Yeah, and I think what you said earlier, I've owned many a mouthpiece and a reed and ligature and horn that got in the way, and,
Yeah, yeah, for me, I really truly like to stick with something for a while, and it's hard because, a lot of times people will ask me to try things out, and it's all good, but then, it's like I don't want to have any question in my head. I just want to be like, I just want to stick with the one thing that I want to do, um, because, there's so many great manufacturers out there, and there's so many, people that play, so they're coming up with different ideas all the time, to help different people, and so that's really cool. It's something that I didn't grow up with at all. You had it was very limited,
yeah. Oh, I remember
choices.
you played on this mouthpiece and that reed, and it doesn't work. Well, you need to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. There wasn't, a whole thing of, many things to choose, which can be overwhelming, at times. But anyway, I digress. Let me do this though. I want to share, I'm going to share the screen again, and let's do at least another track. I appreciate your time. I know we're running
No,
a bit
I'm
over
I'm
time.
I'm good to go. Yeah, I'm with you until you kick me out of here.
Okay, all right. Well, I wanted to do Reed Tire Earth. Let's talk about this one for a second. So I
Okay.
know Chika, I think, starts this one out as well.
No.
Oh, okay.
I think the rhythm section starts and we kind of layer in. And the story about this is kind of like tied in with Chika too. Through Vandoren, when I've been sent out for Vandoren clinics, or even just when I go out to clinic a band or a jazz band, I'm constantly talking to junior high, high school, and even college age students on you need to rotate your reeds because that thing is chipped and cracked. It looks like it's turning orange. It doesn't vibrate correctly. It says 3 on it, but it's really a 1 because you've been playing on it forever. So, and it's the da 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 da. And the whole thing in my head is me nonstop going rotate your reeds, and students either just not listening or not taking it to heart. So that's kind of the reed, tire, earth. Are all things that I say need to rotate in order to survive.
Got it. Okay. Okay. If I can remember, I've got to share a funny story. I'm just going to write a note to myself. I'm going to do it after we listen, though, because
Okay.
I don't want to gross you out. All right. So let's listen to a little bit of Retire Earth. I'm almost thinking Star Wars at this point. I'm sorry. Or John Williams.
I'm a huge fan of both of those too. So yeah.
Okay. There we go. Is that when you find out that they haven't rotated their reeds?
I think that's when I wake up in a cold sweat and realize, oh my goodness.
This is why I've been having a problem. Okay. And there's that melody again. I like that.
Thank you. It's supposed to be kind of cool but haunting.
Yeah, yeah. It reminds me of something. Um, it's just really cool. It's I don't know if I feel like it's haunting. I think that's what you said. It's just there's something about it there's something kind of character about it. I can't put a word to it, which is awesome. That's the awesome thing about music. Really, it really is. And an interesting thing too, so the woodwind instrument is locking in with the drums as opposed to the bass player only. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool. I'm going to bump this ahead a little bit. I want to go over to, actually, let me take it down from down here. Oops. Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say there's a next section after that where it was I composed a improvised solo for Chika, and we started very lyrical, and then I tongue in cheek threw her a bunch of like jazzy, like how do I even say the word, dorky licks and stuff like that, and she's like, what is this? I was like, trust me, it'll be fine.
Where exactly?
Oh, that's right after that next section. So
around here?
Oh, no. It's right after where we were just listening to.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to go like around here. Around here. Okay, cool.
Fun with that.
That's so cool. And I could just picture her saying, "What is this?" And
yeah. I was like, well, I'm going to write you a solo, and so she was mad at me for a little bit, but it was worth it because I think it sounds cool, and it's also kind of a little bit of hilarious.
But what's really amazing, though, first of all, the technique, right? That's not easy.
Yeah,
that's not easy at all. And she's reading that. you
Yeah.
know, which
I
is,
couldn't imagine reading that myself. As I was writing it, I was like, I've never used so many 30-second rests in here.
oh gosh, yeah, yeah, no, for sure. That is not easy to read. Oh my gosh. And it's a testament to her technique,
Oh,
to
yeah.
be able to play that.
She
But
did fantastic. Yeah, no.
no, it's really, really cool for sure. Let me just do a little bit more of this. I want to go to the next another section of here. I'm just going to bump it up ahead over here. And this is you over here, right? And this is
Yes, yes.
right. Okay, so
And
again,
I'm not reading anything.
right, right. No, you're improvising, but
No,
the
I was just joking because I made poor Chika read it. But
no, but the thing though is that you're playing off of the written solo that she was doing before,
yeah.
and here's some of like if you want to call it vertical, angular vertical playing, right? You're going up there, you're doing some of these riffs up there, and you're going really high, and then you're swooping into the higher note and then bringing it down, over here. So no, I find this really interesting over here. Let me just
Thank
do
you.
a little bit more. Yeah, the chord progressions are just really interesting to me. And it's not only that too, a lot of when it comes to jazz and we're relying on the groove, you know, whether it's a swing groove or a funk or you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
here it's not that. It's a percussion line that's going in the background, but it's just different. And so let me stop the share for 1 second. So what again, I know you wrote the piece, but someone soloing over this, it may be almost disconcerting at first because they're trying to grasp or something, you know what I mean? A groove.
I had to. I mean, I heard it in my head, but when I was playing it, I was like, yeah, oh, it needs more space. It needs to like flow and kind of there. When I was first, we were rehearsing, and I'm just blowing and blowing and blowing. I'm like, yeah, that's not right for this. So for me, I mean, again, I've been saying all of them. I try to like have motifs and like build on a solo and not just play note, 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 note. But I felt on this one especially, it's also in a weird time signature. I want to say it's in 5 or 7. I just play the thing now. I don't even look at a chart. I think it's in 5. But with the bass line, it's kind of like a 10 bar kind of, or feeling a 10 one, so anyway, it's just, yeah, it's, in my opinion, you got to approach it a little differently, use space and kind of build with like rhythmic and a little bit of melodic ideas. And hopefully I didn't screw it up too much.
No, 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 no. This is so it's again, we're going to use the word different because this is something that, when people may have tried to blend classical and jazz before, the blending would have a you know what I mean? It would have that kind of groove to it.
Well,
This is
third
different.
stream, right? And,
Yeah.
and that's what I want to try not to be. And I'm not dissing third stream, but I thought, I don't know. I think we go a little deeper into it and kind of like, yeah, instead of just doing the same old kind of thing.
Yeah, and so okay, any words of advice for I'm going to say saxophone players who I'm going to talk about the younger audience who are, they're going to college now, right? They're studying. They want to become a player. They want to, be a full-time musician, but they started off classically and they want to also do jazz as well. There are a lot more classical pieces. I remember interviewing Nikki Roman. Okay, so you probably know her because
Yeah,
she's
she's at the University of Illinois. She's fantastic. She and I have become friends just in the last year or so.
awesome. Yeah, she's a great person. She really is a great person. And we were talking about this, but some other people I was talking with as well on the podcast, there are modern classical pieces of music where you have to improvise. And it's flipping some you know, instruments, they're flipping them out. So yeah, I guess like what advice would you have for the people that are going into college or maybe even their masters or whatever, in terms of yeah, I guess studying this and just being more I'll use the word well-rounded. I don't know because I think it has to be that now.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of Nikki, I was at her school. Chika and I were there last March when Chika was in town. We did a bunch of local dates in Chicago, recorded the album, and then we did some master classes and performances. And we did one at University of Illinois where Nikki was there. And I was telling her we were speaking with all the classical saxophonists, and I said, hey, everyone has their route, right? You classical saxophone, jazz, modern, whatever, be you. But I tell them, like, I am me because I have a mixture of everything. I'm so well rounded. Man, well, that came off really weird. I play classical music. I'm classically trained. I have that the jazz thing, and also just in general, like in my gigging, I've played a million different kinds of gigs. One of my big things out of college, I used to tour with the Guy Lombardo band. If you know that, it's the
Wow.
I don't have my saxophone, but whoa, I remember it was me in my early 20s, and like even even with me in there, the average age of the band was probably like 65. And I remember like the Barry player, the first tune was like more vibrato, kid, no more. And finally, I just like did like the biggest yakety sax thing, and he was like, oh, there you go. I was like, oh my God, I've got a week of this. But stuff like that and different kinds of gigs. I've done so many different things that like it's made me into what I am, and it's made me a little more versatile as well. But so I tell classical, and as I was telling them there, is like you should know a little bit about jazz, especially if you're going to be any kind of educator, in my opinion. I an educator just goes, well, I'm a classical guy. I'm like, yeah, but you're the teacher now, dude. You got to deal with it. So, yeah, and most classical people are great with their scales. One of my biggest practice things is if I have the time, I'll spend several hours just doing different kinds of major, minor modes of scales, just slow scales, full range, and just different patterns on chords and stuff like that. I think if a classical person could do that with the right teacher, a little bit of improvisation is actually not going to be that difficult for them. Well, kind of like when I started, probably when you started, it seemed like weird and you didn't get it at first. But I mean, most of the students again, I keep going back to Nikki, her program is fantastic. All those students, you get a little bit of time with them, they can turn around some really cool stuff with, not a lot of time put into it.
That's awesome. And that's a testament, to her and it
Oh, yeah.
also realizing too, I like that you use the word versatile because I think that's what it is. I think that definitely is what needs to happen. Where it's a different time, again, when I was going to college, it was either classical or jazz,
Mm.
Now some people did do, some people did do both. They realized that. And when Wynton Marsalis, classical and then I should say jazz, and then he put out the classical albums. And there were people that were very the purists were like, oh, he can't play classically. Yes, he can.
Oh, he was a monster. And
Yeah.
if I remember correctly, the only reason he doesn't do it anymore is just because it took, I mean, to stay proficient on the classical and the jazz side, it's difficult. It's a lot of time, unless you
It
can
is.
clone yourself. Yeah, and let's just talk about maybe for the other younger or whatever, the nice wording. I'll say the heck to the haters out there. The people like, oh, you're jazz, you can't do this, whatever. Just go write a bad review of me and leave me alone. I don't care. I'm just sick of the negativity. I'm lucky in all the reviews I've gotten. I've gotten I think 4 total negative ones, and 3 of them were like old guys that thought they were going to hear an old school Ben Webster record, and they heard mine instead. but yeah, no, I'm so sick of critics or whoever, people just being so judgy on things, and especially if you say that Wynton Marsalis can't play classical music, you've clearly never heard it, because Jesus, he was fantastic.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that. And he, I'd still have those CDs in the other room, just some of the stuff that he's able to do, so technically proficient, but also in an incredible sound, you know?
You know what? I remember a trumpet player in Chicago was telling me when we were on tour once. He said it was like on a live of the Grammys, which would have been, I think, in the 80s, where and I guess you can't find anymore because I was even looking at where Wynton's about to play and we're going back from commercial and supposedly like one of his valves is completely stuck and they're like, we're on in 5 seconds. And he plays the thing with only two working valves and it sounds great. I
Okay,
don't know how real that is. That's what a buddy of mine was telling me. I wanted to see that video, and for some reason I can't find it. Maybe he was just screwing with me, but
I don't know. I know that I saw something recently. Maybe it was a special about the Grammys, and they did talk about how Wynton Marsalis actually played at the Grammys, but I didn't hear that story. That's really interesting.
I'd love to think that's true because that sounds awesome.
I know it's not that's not easy, because there you do need your third valve for some of the notes for sure, but that's very interesting. But no, for sure. Well, listen, Shawn, we have to have a little bit of a discussion before we go about first of all where to find you, where to buy your album, why it's important to I use the word buy instead of just stream on Spotify and where people can find out about like your upcoming projects and shows and that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not telling anyone to close their Spotify accounts, but I would just share support artists, me and other people. The deal that Spotify and some other streamers have is just one that they made up, and it's not fair to artists. And basically, I tell everyone if I get played on the radio, I get like 20 cents, which may not seem like a lot, but it adds up, and that's part of how artists make a living is royalties for their works and everything. When you stream me on Spotify, it pays 0.000 like 32 of a cent. So if you purchase a CD, which is $15, I think I did the math, and it's about 7,000 streams you have to do to equal that. Or if you buy a vinyl for $25, it's even more. So I'd encourage everyone to purchase stuff. I know that's not in the for some of us that seems kind of foreign, but I do think streaming and Spotify is going to hit a big roadblock and possibly go away totally soon. Spotify's not making money. Their CEO and the top people are making money. The company's not making money, and neither is the artist, even the bigger artist. And the bottom is going to fall out eventually. And I don't want to make this like I'm scolding anybody about Spotify, but I just want to share. Use Spotify as a tool, as I use SiriusXM and other things as a tool. But if I like an artist, I go purchase and buy stuff. So now that I've scolded you,
No, but
uh,
no, that's really good. And I just that's really interesting with Spotify. I didn't know, what you just shared right now. Yet, the CEO, they're making money. I know, about the artists and how I mean, everybody, you heard this. It's like it's barely a fraction of a penny with a stream. It's not, Taylor Swift is on a different level. She creates her own contracts. She creates her own rates that she gets paid because she did all the grunt work. She did all the grunt work when she first started out, and she became very popular. But when you're talking about, some of your favorite jazz musicians, and I'm hoping for everybody listening, you've watched the show, or if you're new, listen to a lot of these episodes. You're going to hear some amazing music from a lot of people that you've never heard of before. And this is another thing I will say too, listening to these podcasts, getting to know these players, these composers. It's I know a lot of people say this to me all the time. Wow, I never heard of these people before, Donna. Thank you so much. I just bought their album, or I
so
just went to their show, or I just met that person. That to me is like gold.
that's
So
awesome. And you know what I was going to say off of that? In my opinion, I have nothing wrong with Taylor Swift. Good for her.
oh yeah, no,
I'm
absolutely.
not her demographic, nor do I think she is mine. Right? But good for her. But if Spotify continues what it is, what's going to happen is you're only going to have the Taylor Swifts and like the top pop people,
Yeah,
and then you don't have everything else. And I think people kind of don't understand what a big problem that would be when you don't have local musicians and you don't have, I don't want to say the littler guys, but in the city of Chicago, we can drive around all night and catch all kinds of different styles of music and different levels, and that's awesome.
yeah.
So yeah, the CEO of Spotify is a jerk, by the way. I'll just get that in there. He's kind of an a-hole. So if he sees this, yeah, Shawn Maxwell said that to you, so you can kiss my ear. As soon as you write a song, I'll maybe apologize, you jerk. Anyway, The positivity of it. If you want to find out more on me, buy things or anything, you can go to ShawnMaxwell.com. Shawn is SHAWN, Maxwell, Maxwell. There's a million different spellings in Shawn. Or if you just Google Shawn Maxwell, that'll pull up. At my website, I have the current CD and vinyl, as well as several other CDs and some vinyl that we might have left over from there, from different albums. You can also find me on Bandcamp, and I believe it's bandcamp.com/Shawn Maxwell. If you just go to Bandcamp and search Shawn Maxwell, you have everything there, my entire library, as well as final CDs, and you can get downloads as well.
Do you have a
Yeah,
link? Do you have a link from your website? Is there like a link, or hyperlink or something where they can go purchase on Bandcamp, or on your website, are they purchasing directly from you?
yeah. If you go to my website, there's a store link there, and you'll see it around the top. And then you're purchasing directly from me and my company.
Got it.
Bandcamp as well. I have to get a Bandcamp button on there. I finally took the X or Twitter button off because I'm like, I'm not using that piece of crap anymore. So I have to change the buttons. And again, I keep calling back to younger musicians. I'm also my own website host, tech guy. So I'm kind of like maintaining all that just too. And I'm a much better musician than I am a coder. So sometimes it takes me a while to do things.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing, and I always say this, and I usually say it to artists afterwards, and I'm like, you've got to own your list. You've got to, you need a website. Do not rely on social media because that can go away like that. I've seen Bob Reynolds lost his personal Facebook profile, and Bob Reynolds, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it takes a long time to get it back, and sometimes you don't get it back. So you don't have control over that. So you definitely want your own website. You definitely want your own email list. And that's going to be important because people going to want to know where you're playing and how to get in touch with you, and how to listen to your music.
And like you said, the social media thing, it can get stolen like with Bob, which is still messed up to me. But also, I was on the first record label I was on was a local one called Chicago Sessions. The guy who owned it, Nick Ipers, is one of my good friends and my partner, and he's recorded all of my albums since then. But he in the liner notes, he had all the, not only the band leader but the sidemen with their websites. So on mine was Shawn Maxwell, ShawnMaxwell.com, Mark Nelson or Matt Nelson, myspace.com/. They were all MySpace things. I'm like, oh, those don't go anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah, the only thing that's going to survive or has survived since the internet is a website. So whether it be Snapchat or TikTok or Facebook, whatever, it's all going to be gone at some point.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And I know that, and again, the podcast is gonna come out before you have the shows with Chika in the Chicago area. Do you have any shows coming up like April and beyond for the rest of this year? And do you have any other projects that you're working on?
I have we're wrapping up I have a concert series called the Roots and Thirds Creative Music Series with Shawn Maxwell. It's at a place not in Chicago, out in Aurora, Illinois, which the Wayne's World, that's where it supposedly took place in Aurora. It's like the second largest city outside of Chicago in Illinois. There's a place at the venue where I have the first and third Thursday of every month where we have a student band, junior high school, college, come and open up for us. Then I perform, and then prior to that, I go out in clinic and work with the band and teach them a Shawn Maxwell tune and some things on improvisation. And they get up and they play one of those with us at the end. So I have one of those coming up on whatever the third Thursday is. That I can't even remember. And then I'll be in O'Fallon, Illinois, May 1st and 2nd. With their, it's near St. Louis, playing with, I'm the guest artist for their high school jazz night. They'll be doing some Shawn Maxwell originals and different things. Other than that, I got a lot of speaking and working with colleges and different things like that. But if you want to know anything else about me, I'm updating it constantly. There'll be new things up at ShawnMaxwell.com, and I'll have a whole calendar. And if anyone wants to get a hold of me or has questions or anything, you can also contact me through the site as well.
That was going to be my question because I was just thinking, and God bless Gordon Goodwin. I'm still just in shock that he passed away. But people were playing his charts. Everybody was playing his charts. Do you also sell your charts?
No, it's what I need to start doing. and it's
Okay.
it's on my. I have a list that I start every day and week, and I cross so many off, and unfortunately, I add more on than I cross off.
Me too.
So that's it. That's the next step on my store. I'm actually my first step is I need to spend a weekend or a week when I have nothing going on, which knock on wood doesn't seem like it's happening anytime soon, where I just extract everything out of Finale before
Oh
that
God. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and then just kind of cleaning it up and doing that. But if there are people who want charts or dig anything right now, if you send me a message and nice enough, I'll just give it to you
That's
until I
awesome.
get the store running up in there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, because here's the thing too. When people start to hear this, this is really cool. And, you know, yeah, although that's going to be really hard to read, I gotta say, Chica's part, the improvised solo, that's going to be really hard for someone to read. But, oh my gosh.
We'll have a level 1, 2, and 3 on that. I guess we'll change it up.
Okay. I think that would be more palatable. Because that's man, hats off to Chika. I got to contact her when we're done sometime this week and just, definitely, tell her about this. But, hats off to you guys for
Cool.
really
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah, no, really awesome album. And again, the main theme of this is that it's, being different, standing out. And for a lot of people, they don't know how to do that. And do you have any like, last advice for people wanting to stand out and be different?
What I did at first is I copied and I listened and I mimicked, I transcribed, I followed, I blended, and I did that. And I think to stand out and be original at first is kind of hard because you need to know what's there first before you kind of pull away from that. I think some people say, oh, well, I do my own thing. I'm like, yeah, you're wiggling your fingers and making noises. That's that is your own thing. But I was like, maybe learn about the business and the style first. So, get really good at that and mimic. But then when you get good at that, start saying, what can I do different? That's me. And one of my good friends, great saxophonist, he tours around with a band called Two Friends. It's him and two DJs. His thing, he jumps off of huge amplifiers while he's shooting sparklers out of his saxophone.
Oh my gosh.
Not my thing, but it's his, and he's good at it. So find your thing, but have a core of basics and like understanding without that before you start doing it.
That's awesome. That's great advice. Well, listen, Shawn, thank you so much for your time. I'm so
Thank
glad
you.
that we found out about each other through Leah Conchaldi, who was a guest on my podcast. So thank you, Leah, for this as well. This has been great. And, again, like I really like what I'm hearing. So I wish you a
Thank
lot of success with this.
Awesome. Thank you. I had a good time. So hopefully we'll do it again some other time.
Yeah, for sure.